Today I'm going to show you how I make chocolate chunk cookies. This is also good for chocolate chip cookies. Crispy on the outside and gooey in the center. They're going to be good. So before I get to the recipe, I just wanted to share some exciting news. So this past weekend was my first ever pop-up market event. It was a backyard pop-up, very small, but I made baked goods, these cookies that I will show you how to make soon, and I also did homemade mini pumpkin empanadas. The recipe for those are on my channel. I might redo the video. But exciting news, I am going to be launching my very own spice mixes. I made a small batch for the event, which pretty much sold out, but I will be having online spice mixes available soon. So peace and love to those of you that showed up for the pop-up event. I really appreciate it. Okay, on to the recipe. So what I'm doing here is going to weigh the ingredients, and the recipe I'm using is actually from Crisco's shortening. We used to do this when I was young. My grandmother always had the tub of Crisco shortening and we'd use it for cookies. Now what I am going to do that Crisco doesn't do is I'm going to give you the weighed measurements in the metric system. So here I'm weighing my flour. The recipe calls for 2 cups of all-purpose flour. In grams, that'll be 250 grams is what I'm going to be using. We all know that everyone's cup of flour can be different, so what I'm using today is 250 grams of all-purpose flour. To that, I will be adding 1 teaspoon of fine salt. That is around 5 grams of salt. The recipe also calls for 3/4 teaspoon of baking soda. That's around 3 grams-ish of baking soda. I'm just going to give that a mix and set aside until I'm ready to use it. Now for the wet ingredients, I'm starting with 3/4 cup, which is about 140 grams of Crisco butter flavored shortening. Now the cookies that I made this weekend, I used unsalted butter, and you'll notice in the video, if you go back to the beginning, the cookies kind of puffed up a bit more. I think that's because of the dairy in the butter. It makes it sort of puffy. But today I'm going with Crisco. But again, you could use margarine, you could use butter, use what you got. I'm going with Crisco. So now I'm going to add 1 1/4 cups of light brown sugar. That is around 250 grams of light brown sugar. And I'm going to start combining it with a fork. Next, I have 1 large egg that's going to go into the recipe. You probably want to crack it into a bowl before adding it. 2 tablespoons of whole milk and 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract. Give that a mix with a fork. Then once it's sort of combined, I'm going to start with a whisk and make sure that it's creamed well. Okay, so this is creamed very well. Now I'm going to add my dry mixture into the wet, and I'm going to start folding it. And before I forget, I am going to be adding 1 1/4 cups of semi-sweet chocolate chunks. That's about 9 ounces. I will have the grams for you here. Now, if you're doing chocolate chips, 1 cup of semi-sweet chocolate chips works well for this recipe. So I'm just going to fold until it is combined well, just like this. And for this recipe, I do not chill it in the refrigerator. You can if you want. You can make this ahead of time, but I'm not going to. So here I have large baking sheets lined with parchment paper. I'm going to use 2 large ones. This recipe makes about 30 cookies, at least 2 dozen. And I'm using my little mini scooper. So here I'm just going to scoop and place them on my baking sheet, around 2 to 3 inches apart. I managed to fit 15 on 1 baking sheet, and on the second one will go another 15. I'm baking this in a preheated oven at 375 degrees Fahrenheit. For soft center, you'll want to cook between 8 to 10 minutes. For a little bit crispier, firmer texture, 11 to 13 minutes. So as you can tell, my cookies, my oven has a hot spot, but these are perfect. I'm going to let these set for 5 minutes before removing from the baking sheet. That'll help the cookie sort of stay together when you transfer it to a cooling rack. And once I transfer all of them to the cooling rack, just let them cool and then serve with a nice ice cold glass of milk. I hope you give this recipe a try. I hope you like it, and thanks for watching.